Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're in Treaty 1 territory in the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Lynn Nesbitt. I'll be chairing this panel today. Other members of the panel are Gisela Rempel to my left and Brent McIntyre to her left. Our recording secretary is Michelle Newton and our assessor is Matthew Harling. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decision with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant, followed by the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are recorded and will be part of the public record. And will everybody turn off or silence their cell phones, make sure? Mine just went off. So. Okay.
May I make one suggestion?
Yes.
Or I guess two. So we have two withdrawals.
Okay.
Which I'll get to.
Okay.
And then we have two properties that are owned by the same ownership and they have the same issue, so it might make sense to do those together.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually going to suggest the same
Okay,
thing.
and
Yes.
which ones are those?
That would be 221 Kent Road and 65 Fournier Street.
Okay, 65, what number on the document?
Oh, sorry, I'll give you
Because some of them don't.
So I'll give you the file numbers. The first one is 19-1512.
Okay, so item number
Oh, I'm sorry.
4.
Sorry, 19-534. 534.
Oh, 534.
Number 5 and number 8.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, number 5 and number 8. You can look at that way too.
So we'll do those ones together
Yes.
then? Or, okay.
Back to back. Exactly.
And then I understand that our first one is not here today?
That's correct.
So let's start with number 4 then, and then we'll hear number 3 at the very end. Is that?
Sure. Yeah, we can do that one last time.
Yeah, since Mr. Smith is here now, we won't make him wait to hear something that he doesn't need to hear. So we'll hear number 4, then we'll go to number 5 and number 8 together, and then, okay.
We'll jump around.
Pardon me, we'll jump around.
Thank you.
Okay, 1196 Fife Street is our first one.
Okay.
When you're ready. Oh, no, I guess we need to swear in. Yeah.
I'll swear.
You state full name.
Matthew Russell.
You swear that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Can you state your full name, please?
Trevor Smith.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Yes, so that would be,
The two without roofs,
yes,
Okay.
burrows, and then whatever the last one is.
Burrows and, yes, the other woman.
Okay. All right, so we'll start now with 11965 when you're ready.
Thank you. Madam Chair. The file number is 19-1512. The roll number is 14063601100. The address is 11965 Fife Street, and the owner is 1196 Fife Limited. The 2020 assessed value based on a reference date of April 1st, 2018 is $1,361,000. The property type is Vindu or vacant industrial. It is zoned N2 manufacturing general. and the land area is 157,863 square feet. If you look at page 2 of my brief, you'll just see a photo of the subject property. I've outlined in red. You'll see where it has access to on Pike Street. So this is just to show the size and the location of the subject property. Page 3 of my brief is just information about the zoning. Again, it's known as M2 Manufacturing General, and just a brief description of what zoning entails. If you look at page 4 of my brief, you'll just see some information about some cost valuation summary. For this particular property, we have a depreciated cost from detached structures of $35,000, as well as including the land value. So if you look below on page 4, you'll see the breakdown of the cost report we have on the detached structures and how it's valued. So we have 80% depreciation on the chain link fence, parking lot, paving, and then 35% on the tank. So that's just the breakdown of the $35,000 if you look at the value, that they're adding to the value. So. Now if you go to page 5 of my brief, you'll see a list of my land sale comparables. In the first row you'll see the subject property. Again, it's 157,863 square feet. We have a land area of 3.62 acres, zone frame 2, and just some of the land influences. And for this particular property we're using a model rate of $8.40 a square foot. Now going forward, if you look at my land sale comparables, I'm going to just, there's 2 of my comparables I was just discovered that there's some issues with them. They're not pure land sales, there were some buildings on them at the time. So I'm not going to really put too much weight on those 2 comparables, comparables 1 and 2. If you want to look at page 6 roughly, you can see the photos of the subject of those 2 particular comparables. There are some structures on there, so I'm not going to really put any weight on those, much weight on, or any weight really on those comparables, just to let the board know. So if you look at comparables 3 and 4, those ones, this one's 229,744 square feet. It's an Oak Point Highway, so it's similarly close to the subject property. You'll see some of the influences. It's got it's got a rail line, no water, no sewer. The sale date was September 2016, and it sold for $6.57 a square foot. So that's the one comparable. It is larger in size than the subject property. I won't dispute that. And if you look at comparable 4 in my brief, this is in Inkster Industrial Park, very close to the subject property. It's 97,964 square feet, zone M2. This was sold in 2016 for $8.58 a square foot. So those are the comparables I'm going to be relying for this particular property. And below you'll just see again the breakdown, $8.40 a square foot for the model that we've used, which gives us the assessed value of $1,326,000. If you look at page 7 and 8 of my brief, you'll just see the photos of the 2 comparables. One is 55 high, and page 8 you'll just see the photo of subject property and comparable 4 at, on Burroughs Avenue. If you look at page 9 of my brief, it's just a breakdown of classification liability allocation. You'll see that the land value is $1,926,000, adding $35,000 for the detached structures. The detached structures under the cost valuation, which gives us the $1,361,000. And page 10 and 11 of my brief, there's just some information about the municipal access excerpts. And that's the presentation, and I ask the board to confirm the value. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gray. Mr. Smith, do you have any questions?
I do have a few, yes. So I was looking at page number 4 of your brief there, and the cost report for the components of the land.
Yes.
So one of the components that you have, the 4th one there, is the underground tank, which I presume is a fuel tank.
Okay.
Is it not?
I believe so. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. So in the eyes of the market, would this add value to the land, having an underground gas tank that generally requires cleanup and has the potential to contaminate the land? So I would see that as a detriment to the land myself.
Yeah, I'm just, you're right. It wouldn't. I can't say it would, if it would necessarily add additional value. So I don't dispute that.
Okay.
So, but it could be a negative factor. Yes. So.
Okay. And I just for completeness, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but if I could pass out this with regard to the sale comparables. As Mr. Harlan said, he's not really putting any reliance on the first two. I just want to clarify, I guess.
Thank you.
So in looking at the sale comparables, 425 Oak Point Highway was a developed property. It had a 15,500 square foot industrial building on site. It was purchased for redevelopment. The first three photos are of it. It was purchased for redeveloped as a gas station site with a Quiznos and other things at the back of the site. So as Mr. Harlan said, that was not a land sale ultimately. The second property, 29 Spears Road, so this is located just off of Lachemont Boulevard in St. Boniface, where Star Building is. And as you can see, there's a number of structures on that site as well. It was in use as a used automobile dealership at the time of sale on that site. The other issue with that property is that it was a land assembly by Qualico. Star Building is the property owner of the majority of the properties in the area immediately to the north of this on this little stretch of Spears Road, and they're essentially creating a campus. So this was one of the last pieces that they needed to acquire in that area, so they paid a premium for the property as well. I can answer questions on that, or if there are any. And I do have a couple of other points on the other two comparables. If there are questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Do you have any questions on the information presented?
The two you explained, no, I don't have any questions on those ones, no. So, I guess the other two comparables, I guess if you have any, is there anything you can point out? I guess
just quickly. So the comparable number 4. So this is the 1881 Burroughs property. I didn't have this information prior to submitting the brief, but I did the investigation after the fact. Pardon me, starting to lose my voice at the end of term. This property had, and I'm just trying to flip to, I guess it's on your page number 8.
yes.
Yeah.
It's correct.
So this particular parcel was part of a larger whole with 879 Keewatin that is located to the west of it. There's a large single tenant industrial property there. It was owned as a single parcel by Morgard. Morgard sold it off to another investment firm, and they did a subdivision that split this parcel off and sold it separately. And it has retail influence as well. It's adjacent to the Sobeys site on the corner of Keewatin and Burroughs there. So it's sold at a higher value than typical industrial land.
Okay.
That's all my questions.
Not really a question, but
Yeah.
thank you. Brent, do you have any questions?
How old is the underground tank?
Unfortunately, I do not have the exact information of the current age of that tank, unfortunately, sorry, so. We are using a 35% depreciation, so I guess it wouldn't be significantly older, so generally if we put a higher depreciation, it would be an older structure, there would be issues with it, so.
So are there gas pumps associated with this tank?
Unfortunately, I am not specifically 100% aware that that is the case with this tank, unfortunately.
I'm just
So.
wondering how they get the oil or gas.
Oh, I'm assuming they would, if there's gas, they would have to pump it, so yeah, so.
And then wouldn't you apply a cost to the pumps?
We generally would, I guess, yes, so, again, like I said, I'll be honest, I'm not entirely 100% sure of the exact structure, like how the steel tank, if there's pumps in it or not, so I can't speak that unfortunately, sorry.
So that's fine, thanks. That's all my questions.
Ms. Rumpel, any questions?
No, I have no questions, thank you.
Okay, I just have a question. You're relying on comparable 3 and 4.
That's correct, yeah.
4 is smaller,
Yes.
not quite half, but
Yeah,
smaller.
it is smaller, I don't dispute that, yes.
And it's higher, 8.68, but you've used a rate of 8.3.
Yes, yes.
So this is a smaller holding, sometimes you talk about economies of scale.
Economies of scale, yes, yes.
Does that play into it here? And
Yeah, I won't dispute that actually, yes. I mean, if generally, yeah, like a larger site would have a generally a lower rate, so I don't dispute that though, yes, yes, so,
Okay.
yeah.
But that higher rate is something that you're relying on for the subject.
For the
matter.
subject, yes. Originally, I had my other comparables. I didn't realize that they were not as good comparables, so I was kind of reviewing all my comparables. So I guess, I'm a little bit. Yeah, I know where to go with this, but yeah, you're right.
Okay, no, just a question for. And this land is not serviced, or it is serviced?
This particular land, I believe, is. I believe it is serviced. I don't have any information to say that there's no water or sewer or anything like that. I believe it is serviced, so yes.
Okay, and the comparables, are they serviced?
The comparable 3 is not serviced. Comparable 4, I believe, is yes, so yes.
And sorry, you said about the subject that you believe it is serviced?
Yes, yes. I don't have any reason to know that it's not. Yes, because we have it in our system. If there's like no services in water or sewer, it would come up. So there's nothing that came like that. I could find out. So.
And we've also heard through Mr. Smith's questions that comparable 4 has a retail influence as well, right?
Yes. So yes.
Okay. Okay, that's all my questions. Mr. Smith, you ready?
Okay, thank you. So just to deal with the underground tank to start with, it's Penner Trucking that owns the property, and so they obviously supply their trucks and store them on site, trailers, etc. on that location. The underground tank, it has utility for them in their capacity, but you would have to have a user that needed that exact same use for that to be considered as a valuable addition to the land, to add any value to it. And generally speaking, it would be seen as a detriment to the land in that you would have to go through the exercise of doing phase 1s and 2s, determining whether there's any environmental issues regarding leakage, etc. If you're going to develop the site, you may have to remove that underground tank in order to develop above it, etc. So there are significant costs involved there with regard to the underground tank, and there can also be the element of stigma with regard to the property if the market is aware that there's an underground tank on site, and people shy away from buying it for that reason. It can create the stigma where people believe that something is wrong, whether something is or not. It can have an effect on value as well. So that's my comment with regard to the tank. Certainly, I don't see it adding any increased value to the site itself. So let's move directly on to valuation here. The property is in Inkster Industrial Park on Fife, as shown on page number 5. It's on the eastern side of the industrial park. On the other side of Fife, you have some considerably smaller, older industrial, and obviously the rest of Inkster Park is heavily industrial in nature, so it fits in that sphere. You can see the aerial shot on page 6, giving you the exact location roughly. Property sold in March of 2013 for $835,000, as shown on my page number 7. This is $5.29 a square foot, or just a little over $230,000 per acre. Let's move on to the sale comparables, page number 9. So our first sale comparable here, number 1, which is located at Hutchings and Dunlop. This was essentially the last large parcel in Inkster Industrial Park, with the exception, which I was not aware of until after submission of that Burroughs property that we were just dealing with there that was subdivided off. So this property in Inkster Park, 7.3 acres, it's about twice the size of the subject. It sold in 2015 for $2.2 million, $6.89 a square foot, roughly $300,000 an acre. Very well located, good size. You can develop a significant investment property on site or owner-user property. I did investigate the sale. It was sold by Shindico by Ian Corbett. I talked with Mr. Corbett regarding the sale. I asked him about any environmental issues, and he said that they had cleared it essentially prior to sale. They had done phase 1 and phase 2, and there were no contaminants on site, so there was no contamination at the time of sale. I have some potential further thoughts on that one later on, but I'll leave it at that. That being the only sale that we are aware of in the area, I've provided some other sales of similar size and utility. Many of them being, or most of them being in St. Boniface Industrial Park. So we have 2017 sale number 2 there at $4.92 a square foot. This is again 5.68 acre property in the heart of the St. Boniface Industrial Park. So that's the area just south of Dugald with it's the modern section of St. Boniface Industrial. It's not the old industrial, which we'll be dealing with a bit later on the other side of Lagimodiere. The same goes for number 3, 685 Camille Sis, 2017 sale, 4.5 acres, $4.02 a square foot, $175,000 an acre. The Inksbrook property, $1,140,000, 4.47 acres, $586 a square foot. And then we have 2 further ones in Camille Sis in 2017 at $2.75 a square foot, or sorry, $4.18 a square foot and $4.92 a square foot. Now these are serviced, shovel-ready development sites in that St. Boniface Industrial Park. Typically, St. Boniface Industrial Park draws somewhat lower sale prices per acre for land. There's a couple of reasons for this. It's viewed by developers as not having quite as good access, not being as ideal a location. Typically, what we're seeing now, of course, is developers locating just adjacent to the perimeter and the surrounding RMs as far as developments in industrial areas just immediately outside of the city. You have the Inksbrook area that has sprung up significantly in the northwest, and then of course there's the Centerport developments going on the west side of the city, drawing the majority of the interest. So St. Boniface Industrial does tend to get somewhat lower price per acre, so we're not drawing a direct comparison there. Inkster Park, obviously mature, probably the most mature industrial area in the city, or one of. It is a good location, but would not be the same as locating in your Centerports or your Inksbrooks with regard to access, etc., for the majority of industrial users. So, looking at our sale price of the property itself, having sold in 2013, as noted, our most recent sale in the immediate area was the Hutchings and Dunlop sale at plus thousand per acre. Better located than the subject property itself. Bit better layout. It has significantly greater frontage on its front street than the subject property does, so it would have better potential for layout of buildings on site. So looking at the comparables themselves, generally we're looking at $4 to $6 a square foot range. The Hutchings and Dunlop, again, traded at $6.89 a square foot range. That was essentially the peak of the market. It was the last remaining parcel there, essentially in that area. The subject isn't developed as such, other than with the fencing and a small area of paving, but it is in that same area, not as ideally located, not as developable. So we have put a value indicator of $300,000 per acre on the subject based on this analysis, which gives us our market value of $1,080,000. And I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Harling, do you have any questions?
I have one question. I noticed that the ones are fairly relying on the one at Hutchings and Dunlop. So you say there's no contamination to land. Do you have anything to provide with that if there's been still contaminated?
So I'm under oath, and I interviewed the sales agent for the property when the property was sold, which was Mr. Ian Corbett from Shindico, and I had the direct conversation with him and asked him about contamination, etc. And he said that they had done a phase 1 and 2, and there were no issues in it. And his off-the-cuff remark was that perhaps it was the neighboring landowner that had brought forward some issue of contamination on their property, on the property adjacent to it, but I have no background on that. But I did go through the investigation regarding that site itself in interviewing the people involved.
Good. Yeah, no, because I was trying to find some information. I couldn't find anything on that, but that's all my questions. So.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre, any questions?
Yes, one, which may lead to another. You didn't make any provisions for the improvements, the detached structures in your valuation.
No, I didn't. Is the fencing? I mean, the fencing is there. Yes, if you want to add $1,000 to it, I'm not opposed. The area of paving that's present there, if you look at page number 5, majority of the site is gravel surface. It's only where, so if you look at my page number 5, there's the square that is grassed, and just to the west of that, there's a small paved area where the cars are parked. The remainder of the site is gravel surface. So if the property were to trade and be developed, I think it might even be questionable whether that paving would remain in place, depending where they situate the building. So it might, does it add value? Maybe. I'll leave that to your discretion.
Because when I look at page 4, I would suggest that that fencing has an electronic gate.
Yeah, the front is, yes. So given their business, they need to have them locked down. So yeah, that is correct.
And the whole property is fenced.
I'm sorry.
The
The
whole
whole
property
property is fenced.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. That was my only question.
Thank you, Ms. Rumpf.
Yes, I note in the letter on page 2 that this property was inspected.
Yes, we did walk the property. Yes.
Did you do the inspection?
No, I did not personally do it myself, but our firm did send somebody to inspect the property.
Okay. Do you know if this property is serviced?
It is serviced.
Is
Yes.
it serviced? Do you know the age of that tank we've been talking about?
No, but I believe, I do not believe that it was, I don't think it was another transport company prior to them. So it's probably relatively recent, but again, is there value to that tank? My understanding of the market is that it would go in the other direction.
And you indicated that this property was purchased in March of 2013 for $835,000,
Correct.
which is $529 a square foot.
That's right.
Okay, and I noticed that the majority of your comparables are under that price.
Yes, it's an interesting thing in trying to come up with perfect comps, right? So in this immediate area, there's exceptionally few sales because it's mature and generally all developed, with the exception of the Hutchings sale and the Burroughs one, which I was not aware of, which is the retail influence. So I was looking to get the most recent industrial sales of a similar size and zoning and utility, and the majority of them fell in that St. Boniface Industrial Park area, which I would say would be undervaluing the property if we valued it on the same per square foot as what those sold for, because they typically go for somewhat less in that area.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. And the questions I had have been asked. So that's great. We'll finish up with that one. All right, we're going to 221 Panet. Is that the first one of the two that are together?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the one we'll start with. Mr. Heather, when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The file number is 19-534. The roll number is 0605-174-7000. The address is 221 Panet Road, and the owner is 3274692 Manitoba. The 2020 assessed value based on the reference date of April 1st, 2018 is $1,775,000. The property type is new or vacant industrial. It is zoned M3 manufacturing heavy, and the land area is 669,504 square feet. If you look at page 2 of my brief, you'll just see a photo of the subject property. I'll just briefly describe this property. It's just off of Warren Road and Panet Road, and unfortunately got cut off of it, so it's Panet Road and Warren Road where it's located. Just to give a little background, I mean, I'm sure Mr. Smith will go into more depth, but this site was a former city dump, so just to get an idea of the land. So this was a former dump, but this is the area, this is the subject property. If you look at page 3 of my brief, you'll just see it's zoned as M3 manufacturing heavy, and just a brief description of what heavy manufacturing land entails. If you look at page 4 of my brief, you'll just see the cost valuation summary. We're just assessing this as just on land, so just land value $1,775,000. There were no recent sales on the subject property. Now going to page 5 of my brief, you'll just see a list of my land sales comparables. If you just look at the subject, you'll see again it's located at 220 Panet Road. The land area is 669,504 square feet, which is roughly 15.3 acres. So it is MP manufacturing heavy. You see some of the land influences. It's got a bus route, new traffic. It does have some restrictions on it due to the fact that it was on a former city dump, and it is contaminated. So that's another issue that's with this particular parcel of land. And we are using a model rate of $2.65 a square foot for this, which gives us the $1,775,000. If you look at my land sale comparables, my first one was actually one we had just spoken to previously, the one on Inkster Industrial. I do have it, we have this 319,276 square feet. If you'll see below us in the land influences, we do have this contaminated soil, but Mr. Smith has said from his talk with the owner that apparently it's no longer contaminated, so I'll let the board decide with that. So it did sell again in January 5th, 2015 for $2,199,000, and sale price per square foot is $6.89. If you look at comparable 2, This property is on Marion Street. It's significantly larger than the subject property. It's known as well as M3 and manufacturing. It's 130 acres, so it's quite larger. It also has a rail line. It is contaminated as well. And it did sell in April 7th, 2016, from all the knowledge I have, roughly at $1.25 a square foot. Comparable 3, this is in the St. Boniface Industrial Park. It's 371,000 square feet, square feet of land, roughly 8.51 acres of land, so as well as M3. This particular property, it's not contaminated. It does, however, have no rail line. It has a rail line influence and has no access. It has no sewer or water access at this time that I'm aware of. And it sold in 2017 for $1.4 million at $3.77 a square foot. And comparable 4, this one is properties on Mission Street, close to the subject property. It is quite smaller than the subject property. So at M3, it is also this was also contaminated land close to a rail line. It sold at $5.05 a square foot, and it was 2014 sale, so it is quite older than some of my other land sale comparables. But I'm just showing to show contaminated land. But contaminated land does sell, so it's not as valuable as not contaminated land, but it's still people who do buy this land. If you look at page 6 of my brief, you'll just see some photos of the subject properties. Page 6 at the top, we've already seen the one on Inkster in Dunlop there. Below is the one on Marion Street. Again, see how much larger that one is than the subject property. Page 7 of my brief is just the land sale comparable 3. This is just off of Masnot Road. So again, this is, I just didn't zoom out as much, but this is the subject property for this one, and the parcels related to the land. And page 8 is the property on Mission Street. Again, it's very similar size, well, not the same shape, but it's quite a smaller than subject property, but again, contaminated, close to the subject property. So, page 9 of my brief is just some information, some classification liability information. Again, we're just using $669,504 at the model rate, $2.65 a square foot. And page 10 and 11 are just some information about the municipal assessment tax reserves. And one other thing I'd just like to speak to, I'm not bringing this as evidence, just speaking to it. I did manage to find there was another property on 120 Softly Road, which is south of Lagimodiere Boulevard. There was an investment opportunity by Avis & Young for this particular property. It was also a former dump site. I don't believe there was any sales on it that I know at this time, but there was a listing for it. It's slightly smaller than subject properties, around 3.2 acres. And it was offered at $500,000. So now again, it didn't sell, I'm saying, but I'm just trying to say that these lands with former dumps, there is potential for them still. I'm not saying they're great lands, but I'm just saying there is an investment opportunity for this one. So I'm just saying, and it is close to the subject property. So I'm just trying to say that regardless if it is contaminated, I believe there is still some value in it. So, but that being the case, that's my presentation, and I guess the board confirm my dad. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harlan. Mr. Smith, do you have any questions?
I do, just with regard to the property just mentioned there, the 120 Softly. So that was being marketed for sale by Avison, right?
That is correct, yes.
But they did not achieve any sale.
No, there's nothing I could go aware of, no.
Right. Obviously, one can advertise anything for a sale, I imagine, right?
Oh yes, no, I understand.
Yes. All right, looking at page number 5 then, the comparable number 2 that you have there, was the city able to do any background research on that one? When there was a sale, we did do some. I was looking at the notes that we had in our system, and here it was like an arm's length sale. So there's nothing I could find other than that. So right, it certainly is. It is an arm's length sale. It's a trade of the Canada Packers site.
I am correct. That's correct. Yes.
Right, and the city's aware that its end use is it's being redeveloped as a multi-purpose development site with retail, high-end flex warehouse, and multifamily on site.
I was not aware of the current at the time. No.
Okay. the Mission Street property, so comparable number 4 there, that would be located on the north side of Mission, just before Panet, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So, would you term that being a better location in terms of visibility, frontage, access than the subject?
Yeah, I believe it would be, I mean, I don't believe the subject property, it does have access on Panet, so I mean, it's very close, so I mean, I believe it would be fairly similar access, fairly similar.
Okay, and the visibility?
The visibility, no, I believe the visibility would be a little better on the Mission, I disagree. so.
Okay, and it's a little over 1 acre versus the subject size of 15?
Yes, it is quite large, I don't dispute that, yes.
Okay. Those are all my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre, do you have any questions?
Is it service?
This land, as far as I know, I believe it is, yes.
That was my only question, thank you.
Ms. Rickett?
Yes, I note that the subject property is the only one that indicates under land influence that there are restrictions.
Yes.
Can you tell me what?
Well, again, this particular property, due to the fact that it was, again, a former city dump, there are certain restrictions on the land. For example, this particular, I don't believe you can build any permanent structures on it due to that. So that's what would be some restrictions, such like that. So that I could find out what this is. So.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, so with respect to these restrictions, just following up, none of your other comparables, while they may be contaminated, except
Yes.
we've heard about comparable ones,
Yes.
they don't have restrictions.
No, they do not know.
So, for Panet then, what sort of development could take place given all these restrictions?
Well, basically, the land at this point can be used for it's used for storing like asphalt and such. So right at this point, it's just used for storing. Like, there's no permanent structure that can be
Okay,
on there.
so there might be an asphole plant.
Yeah, plants,
but
exactly.
but
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
movable, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have one follow-up question.
Of course, yeah.
What, was the city able to find any sales of former landfill sites?
Of sales,
Of landfill sites?
I don't have any sales on the landfill site.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, with your presentation?
Okay, thank you very much. So as noted, the subject property is a former landfill site, so I'm just going to take you, we're going to jump around a little bit here just for ease of explanation. So maybe we'll start on page number 6, the site itself. So it's located at the corner of Warman Road and Panet Road. And if you look on the adjacent page, number 7, you can see the location in that old St. Boniface industrial area on the west side of Highway 59, north of, north and south of Dugald. So this is all M3 zoned heavy industrial area. It's where a lot of the original industrial developments, not from the start of the city, but shortly thereafter, I guess, started in the 20th century, started popping up in this area. And again, it's all M3 zoned, heavier industrial use in that area. So you have your, former Canada Packer type properties, meat packing, you have meat byproduct processing, you have the mushroom plant, you have the Shell oil tank facility, all things of that nature in that area. That's the area that we're located in. The roadways typically are not in the same condition as you would find in a St. Boniface Industrial Park or Inkster or Fort Garry or Inksbrook or any of these locations. The visibility is, I'd say non-existent, because you can drive down Warman or Panet in that area and see it, but there's no higher end use where you could develop it for a type of use where visibility was important. So let's stick with my page number 6, just for a second. I've highlighted a bit of material there for you. Again, it is a former City of St. Boniface landfill site. The entire site is within the impacted and restricted area. As noted in the Golder and Associates report produced for the City of Winnipeg, which is referenced a little later in my report. So the City of Winnipeg had Golder and Associates do an impact study on their former landfill sites, which we've referenced in our report here. I will take you to my page number 9, where we start confirming that this is an impacted site. So I'm not going to go through this in detail. The site was operated between 1950 and 1969. Page number 9 gives you the first indication. Moving on to page 10, you have another City of Winnipeg chart at the top there indicating the landfill site. Bottom of page 10, same information also taken from the City of Winnipeg, again indicating it's a landfill site. And then page number 11 as well, that being taken from the Golder and Associates report itself, showing you the location of the former landfill site. Now, the subject property itself, if you move on to page number 12, it gets into more detail with regard to the Golder and Associates report. So they did 2 reports actually. Landfill environmental risk report for closed landfills, and then landfill land use potential report. So I reference both of those on my page number 12 there. Golder identifies properties having groundwater that has been impacted by petroleum hydrocarbons. Additionally, since the site has landfill gas probes that are monitored for methane off-gassing. The testing area, they're stating that the area for testing of methane off-gassing cannot be reduced as it's still strong, essentially. Ensure, section 2 of that report, in my paragraph 2 on page 12 there in the highlighted section, ensure that the remaining on-site building is kept open to off-gas essentially, and limit future development on the site while landfill gas is still being generated. Following that, areas of restricted development have been proposed for each site. Restricted areas are the greater the interpreted extent of potential groundwater impacts or the interpreted extent of potential landfill gas impacts, whichever is greater. It goes through some more text there, obviously. In any case, what is being stated is that, as already mentioned, the development of the site is significantly restricted and is essentially restricted to no permanent structures. So if you buy this site, your only use of it is for surface storage, essentially, and that is indeed what the owners use the site for. Is they're a paving and heavy construction company, so they store their gravel and sand and other components of paving materials on site and trucks, etc. The site itself is shown on page numbers 4 and 5. You can see the state of it. There's some groundwater storage on site, and that there's a low-lying area, as you can see on page 5. And on page number 3, we have a bit of background on the property as well, in that and this is the remarkable part, we're looking at an increase in assessment of $1,647,000 plus,
Okay, so
1,300%.
I know you wanted to get that in, but I do need to point out that we're not to consider assessments from the previous cycle.
Right.
Perhaps you can get your point across in a different way.
I can. I would also, I guess, like to speak to that briefly, in that it has come to our attention that this this directive essentially has been presented to the members of the panel. The directive being that panel members are not to look at either prior assessments or prior decisions or existing decisions from 2020. What this essentially does is restrict your ability to consider information presented to the panel that's relevant. It's being a quasi-judicial body. There is the issue of precedent being set, whether individual panel members were present at prior hearings or not. The information certainly is relevant material, and if it's not allowed to be heard, it certainly can present an issue of equity in that the panel members' ability to consider all the information is impacted, and essentially the impartiality is kind of impacted as well. We can't obviously direct judges as to what they can and can't consider, but equally we shouldn't be able to direct panel members in that way, in our opinion.
And thank you, your views are noted. This might not be the forum for that to be.
I guess I certainly understand that and respect that, and thank you for bringing that up. I don't think there is a particular forum that would enable us to put that information out there at this point in time, but I do understand and respect what you're pointing out there. So,
But carry on.
yeah, I will carry on. My point being, our 2020 assessment is dramatically different, let's say, than it has been, and is not in keeping with the prior assessment for the property, which was based on information presented by myself. Let's move on then. Let's move on to the valuation section, page number 14. See, and again, this again brings up issues of equity, so I'm going to, you can certainly stop me, but the information that I have here is relevant. What I'm showing on page number 14 is a different landfill site, also encompassed, and in fact, I think this is admissible in that it's in reference to material that I'm presenting on page numbers 9 through 11. This is the Boulder Information Report with regard to the location of the former landfill sites and the extent of them. If you look at page 11 and you look at the far right-hand side of that, so running up the middle of that diagram there is Lagimodiere. So on the east side of Lagimodiere, that larger pink square on the far right-hand side, that is also a part of the landfill site. The city of Winnipeg has valued that site, and I'm not directly comparing assessments, I'm merely pointing out information. That landfill site, 200 Warman Road, is currently assessed by the city of Winnipeg at $1.03 per square foot, 44,000 an acre. It's the same landfill in the same location valued considerably different than the subject property, with the same issues, same monitoring, et cetera, et cetera. Page number 15, we have a different landfill site. This is 99 Murray Park Road. The information is there for the board to review. Again, the city has valued this site significantly differently. It's also a former landfill site, and it is valued at 17 cents a square foot, 7,461 per acre. It's considerably larger than the subject, but that is how it has been valued by the city. Now, in looking at the subject property, the reason we're presenting this is equity. We're looking for the same treatment, the same methodology in valuing the subject property. It does not appear that that seems to be the case in looking at the value that has been arrived at. So moving on to market value, page number 16. What we have presented here are the most applicable sales that we were able to locate. Now, we'll go back considerably in time and show some sales of impacted land, which were the only ones we were able to identify that were true ones. But the most recent sales, 330 Mazenod, little, just under 16 acre site, $3.80 a square foot. It's in the immediate area of the subject property. We have property just off of Lagimoje, 12 acres, so similar in size to the subject as was 330 Mazenod. Sold in 2014 for $363 per square foot. Considerably better location, visibility, access, etc. Better zoning as well. So those are two similar size parcels in the immediate area. Relatively recent sales in that $350, $360, $380 per square foot. The subject will be considerably inferior to them, given the reasons already stated. Inksbrook, so new development, highly sought after, 2.1 acre parcel at $463 a square foot. We have an older sale on Mission from 2014. Considerably smaller, it's just over an acre at $5 a square foot. Our sales after that, there were two that have some retail influence just north of Regent on Day at Larsh and Gunn, that being 5 and 6. Significant size in that 35 cents and $1.84 a square foot for those sales. The ones at the bottom of the page are St. Boniface Stockyard sales. We did not have the information on the most recent sale of the entire site, which is obviously a considerably different dynamic in developing as a mixed-use center. If you look at the bottom of page 16, so the Stockyard sale that we've identified there, again, it transacted at 13 cents a square foot. The situation there has changed dramatically, and you now have a mixed-use development happening. The main issues to be considered for the subject property are obviously the significant environmental impacts, which limit its potential value to market participants. There'd be significant cost with cleaning up the site, and indeed you have to, it's more of a situation where you need to wait for it to clear itself of methane than one where you can clean it up. The other issue is the issue of being restricted from being developed with permanent structures. So when your only use is surface storage, that has obviously a dramatic impact on the value of the land, in that you cannot penetrate the ground and develop any structures on site. So what then becomes the value of that land? Considerably less. So we have looked at the sales that we have located in the market. We've looked at other similar properties that are also former landfill sites that have been evaluated by the city in this cycle, and we've applied a value indicator of 10,000 per acre to the subject property based on the information available. Again, it's essentially an undevelopable site in heavy industrial area with environmental contamination that is not going away anytime soon, as the city is committed to ongoing monitoring. So using 10,000 an acre gives us a market value of $154,000. And while I can't speak to it, I will indicate that that is a slight lift over our prior valuation for the subject property from prior time. Thank you.
Mr. Harling, do you have any questions?
Question about the comparables. So your actual market comparables. Which ones would you think would be the best indicator value for this one, like the most comparison for this subject property?
I'd say that there's no particularly good comparables in terms of putting in there being a similar property out there that transacted, and indeed the one that you had mentioned, 120 Softly Road, is a good indicator because there was no market for that property. They advertised it and nobody would obviously purchase it.
Okay, this time, yeah. So then, I guess would you say your value is more relying on the direct comparison approach of the two other properties you mentioned, the Mormon Road and the 99 Murray Park, I guess? Would you build those you would be relying more on, I guess, or?
I am looking at equity in those issues with regard to the subject property. So while I'm not directly basing it on those, we are taking that information into account.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre?
I have no questions.
Ms. Winnipeg?
Yes, I'm wondering, of your sales comparisons that you've listed here, do you know whether any of those have restrictions, such as the subject property?
I know that the 660 Marion and the Archibald, so the oldest sales there, the bottom two, this being the St. Boniface Stockyards, there is environmental damage and stigma associated with those. Now that's going back 12 years, so I'm not saying that that is exactly equatable to the subject. But those were the ones that we were able to identify as having environmental impacts that have traded in that immediate area.
Now, I'm not aware, but do you know how long has the subject property landfill site been closed?
So they operated it between, I think it was 1950 and 1969. Let me just flip back to that information here, because I did have page number 9 was operated between 1950 and 1969. So
Sorry,
since
I can't read all of this
No
information so
problem.
quickly, so
Yeah,
thank
no
you.
worries.
Thank you for that. Do you know normally how long testing would continue for contamination?
I think that's site dependent as to the extent of the
result of
methane
the
and other
testing.
off-gassing. So it would depend on the testing itself. If the contaminants and off-gassing continue, the testing would continue. I know that there's because the older reports were done to provide guidance, and they're essentially recommending ongoing testing for a significant period of time.
Thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Because I can't do the math fast, what does this work out to per square foot?
Oh, per square foot?
Yeah. Thank you.
I didn't
I've been
include that
told
either,
23
did I?
cents. Maybe you can confirm that though.
I'm sure your math is accurate.
And in the meantime, I'd like to redirect a question to the city. Don't want to talk about assessments of properties, but there appears to be a methodology change in how this property was valued. Can you speak to the methodology change?
Well, last cycle, when it was the board that made their decision on that, we weren't an agreement with the decision, so we actually have further taken it to municipal board. So, so we were the previous at that cycle too when we got we were still we didn't agree with the situation, and we were using the same methodology we used before. I mean, we understand it got cut, but we weren't agreeing with that. That's why we were continuing the way we were.
So in the meantime, it's gone to the municipal board, you're back to using your previous methodology?
Correct, yes.
And, okay, so that's where we're at.
That's basically it, yeah.
Okay. And did you confirm the 23 cents, or are you?
It is, yes.
Okay. Okay, is there any further questions, or are we done with this one?
Nope.
Yep, we're good. All right, so then we will move to number 8 on the docket, right? 65 Fournier Street.
Okay,
Great.
great. Thank you,
Yes, go
thank you,
ahead.
Madam Chair. The file number is 19-546. The roll number is 0605044370. The address is 65 Fournier Street, and the owner is Biden Rock Asphalt Producers Ltd., and this is City of East. The 2020 assessed value based on the reference date of April 1st, 2018 is $667,000. Subject property is Vindu, or property type is Vindu Bacon Industrial. It is zoned M3 Manufacturing Heavy, and the land area is 435,308 square feet. If you look at page 2 of my brief, you'll just see the subject property. This property is right below the previous property. I'm sure you kind of see the outlines of it. Sorry, I didn't zoom out as much, but I do actually have a bigger photo if you'd like to see more of the property. It's the same property, it's the same picture, it's just blown up more if you want to see it better.
Sure.
Just, yeah, it's all it is, just a photo. So. Just penciled out as 3 things. So. Just to get an idea of it, to see it's bigger, so it's easier, maybe you can see it better. Sorry, I only have 3. I thought I-
Share?
Sorry, I didn't
Do you
I
want to
thought I
say
had
it?
people
You're
here
good?
more, so, yeah, it's
Please
just a,
do.
it's just a photo, that's all.
It's okay.
He doesn't.
Okay.
Okay, so, yeah, so that, just to give you a relation to the property, you can see it, I guess, if you can see, it doesn't have as good, it doesn't have as great access as the previous subject property too, so, just to give a little relation to that. It actually passes through the road, it has to pass through a couple other properties, it has to pass through to get access to this particular site, so. Look at page 3 of my brief, and this is particular property zone M3, manufacturing heavy, and then description of manufacturing heavy. Page 4 is just the evaluation summary. We're just valuing this land at $667,000. If you look at page 5 of my brief, you see the subject, 65 Fournier Street. We're using this particular parcel of land is 435,308 square feet, roughly 9.99 acres, again zone M3. Land influence is just contaminated soil. And we're using a model rate of $1.53 a square foot for this particular property. I would just like to note that we are using a slightly lower model rate for this particular property due to the access issues for this property. So that is another reason why we have used a lower rate for this particular property, as I know it's slightly smaller of a subject. So. Now, if you look at my comparables, I believe we went over all these comparables, like my first one being on the Marion Street. Again, 2016 sale, $1.25 for that one roughly. The one on Hutchings, and the Inkster Industrial, which is spoken to again, I haven't contaminated, but from what I was told, it was not contaminated any longer. My comparable 3 is on Mission, again, we spoke to that one as well. Slightly, significantly smaller subject property, slightly older sale, contaminated land sold for $5.05 a square foot from 2014. Comparable 4 is on Black Diamond, 371,000 square feet. In the St. Boniface Industrial Park, roughly M3 zoning, essential services, sold in 17 for $3.77 a square foot. And I have added another comparable number 5, which is also in the Mission Industrial. It's smaller than subject property, it is zone M3, it doesn't have any services, however it is not contaminated, and it is quite an older sale compared to the other sales. So my sale ranges range from $1.25 a square foot up to $5.05 a square foot. So those are the comparables I'm relying on to justify the model rate we have applied. So if you look at page 6, again, you'll just see some photos of the subject property. Compare the sale 1, on Mission, 2, on Inkster. Page 7 is my comparable on Mission Street. and comparable 8 is on page, 4 is an 8. And page 9 is comparable number 5, the new one I added, so. And I would also just like to mention too, this property is similar issues as the other subject property, very similar. Again, same restrictions, there's no building, cannot build on it. Same issues with the methane gas and such. So again, it's the same owner, business owner that's using this space as the other space. This one is, the previous space was more used for like storage, whereas this is kind of where they have their operations running. So, yeah, that's my presentation, and I can work from the value. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, do you have any questions?
I do, yes. So looking at, you had mentioned comparable number 2, the Hutchings Street property. I just wanted to clarify. So at the time of sale, it was not contaminated. It wasn't that it wasn't contaminated any longer.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yes, that's what I meant. Sorry, I meant, yeah,
Contaminated
at the time,
all.
yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. And then just looking on that page number 5 there, as the area for the subject of 1.53 acres, it's actually 10 acres.
Oh, it's 10, okay. I had it at 9.9, so I got it rounded, sorry, so yeah.
That might just be a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I believe it is actually just
Right?
an error, yeah, because I wrote it down on
Just
mine.
wanted to clarify there. The black diamond sale, that is located again in that St. Boniface industrial park area in the new section where the Waters was developed, the Flex Warehouse, and then south of that you have Parmalat.
Yes,
This
that
is
is,
right adjacent to Parmalat, I
yes,
believe. Is
that's
that-
correct, that is correct.
Okay. So new developments. That Mission Street property, do we know what the contamination is?
I do
there?
not have
Is that-
I couldn't find information on these specific contaminations, no, so.
I'm just guessing it's adjacent to the rail. Would that be what we'd be looking at?
I would suspect that would be the case. Again, I'm not familiar with what exactly was on site previously or for what building was on there, but yeah, I would assume there was some issue with the rail line behind it, so.
Okay. And then I guess my main question, sorry, 2. So you had stated the subject has lower model price per square foot based on access.
That's what we're, yes.
Okay. Is there any consideration given to the ownership of the property?
I'm not aware of if there's anything in the model for that, no.
And then, just my last question, there's a number of other former landfill sites in the city that have significantly lower value price indicators per square foot or acre as developed by the city. Do you know what the reasoning behind this being significantly higher than those would be?
I'm not aware of those particular sites, so I can't really speak to that, so I'm not sure enough, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. McIntyre, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Rempel?
Yes, I'm wondering, did I hear correctly that this is the same owner as the previous?
Well, it's a city lease, so it's the same business that uses the Bison Rock Asphalt. They use the space above for storing the asphalt and everything. So whereas this property is, it's the same business that uses the space. Yes, so.
So I noticed on the former case we were reviewing, it didn't say city lease.
Well, I believe they own that space, but this one is a city lease. Yes, so this particular space. That's to the best of my knowledge that I can find. So.
Okay, those are all my questions, thank you.
Okay. And just to clarify, this is also a former City of
Yes,
Winnipeg
that-
dump.
that is
St.
correct.
Boniface dump,
Yes, that is correct. Yes.
other side of the street sort of thing.
Basically, it's right below. So yeah, that whole area is impacted. Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Smith?
Yes, so as noted, we're dealing with the exact same area. If you look at my page number 6, the subject property is outlined in red. The property that we were just dealing with is immediately to the north of that. As noted, access to the subject site is not as good, nor visibility, etc. Essentially, it's kind of landlocked at the back there. There is access from, I guess, the north side on Fournier there. These are all the substandard gravel roads, etc. There would be certainly no sewer and water for the subject site at the back there. Let's run through some information relatively quickly. So, exact same situation. The subject property is a former landfill site. All of that information as taken from the City of Winnipeg reports as produced by Golder Associates. It's there in brief for you. Subject property is restricted in that you cannot develop any permanent structures on site. You cannot penetrate the ground, etc. So you're limited again to surface storage on the site itself. All of this information is in the report there for you to read. So the actual use of the site is as bison rock and asphalt. So it's an asphalt producing plant essentially is what it is. You can see the photos on page number 4 and 5. None of the equipment that you see there is permanent. It's all removable and it doesn't penetrate the ground essentially, and makes use of the property as it is. What hasn't been accounted for here is that it's a tenanted site. They don't own the property. It's the City of Winnipeg that owns the property, and they lease it from them at a relatively nominal rate, is my understanding. I wasn't able to obtain the information with regard to any lease amount, but it's not a significant amount. So in looking at my page number 8, the appellant is the tenant, not the city, obviously. They're leasing it from the city. So they don't hold the fee simple right to the property. They have a leasehold estate in it, and that their lease is obviously registered against title, and they have the rights of a tenant under the law. None of these is the right to trade the property, so they cannot sell the property themselves, nor do they have the right to continue on after the termination of their lease, etc. So there's no benefit to the appellant for any sale that may happen here. The City of Winnipeg has leased the property on the following conditions. Maybe we did get information with regard to the lease. Minus the lease rate. Tenant acknowledges that it's a former landfill site and that methane and carbon dioxide gases may be present. Solid and liquid materials from the landfill may be dangerous to health. Tenant will not erect or permit the erection of any other building or structure whatsoever on the subject property, nor make any excavation therein or improvement thereon. So again, strictly limited to surface use. And ultimately, the tenant is responsible for the taxes but cannot benefit from any sale of the property itself. The city being the owner of the property. The remainder of the information with regard to valuation I've already presented. We'll just again quickly cover this ground. The city has approached valuation of various former landfill sites with not with a common methodology, it appears, as we get some pretty wide discrepancies in the values that are applied to them based on market value indicators per square foot or per acre. In fact, we have the same exact landfill site at 200 Warman across Lagimodier, shown in the Golder report, as shown in my brief here, being valued at just over $1 per square foot. Now, we're not in agreement with that value, but that is what the city has placed on that one. We have another former landfill, 99 Murray Park, being valued at $7,461 per acre, 17 cents a square foot. And what we're essentially pointing out with regard to the inclusion of these is that there is no common methodology or equity being applied in the valuation of these properties by the city in coming up with final market value for similarly impacted properties. So our information with regard to sale comparables is there again on page number 15. The page 16 again just presents the main things to consider. Property is restricted from development of any permanent structures, so you cannot develop this with any buildings, any fencing, anything of that nature. And the significant environmental impacts limit its potential to market participants. And then we have the additional level of the fact that the applicant is the lessee, they do not own the property, and they cannot sell the property for a profit. So we have a marginally lower value indicator of 9,000 per acre on the subject property versus the 10,000 on the prior one. We also have the issue of visibility and access to this being significantly lower than the prior property, so we've used 9,000 per acre, giving us our market value of $90,000. If we flip back to page 3, I would again note that our valuation is a slight increase over the reduced assessment from the last cycle, and we have accounted for what we would see any lift in the market being for a property that continues to be environmentally damaged and so forth. Thank you.
Mr. Smith. Mr. Harley, any questions?
Just a kind of a quick question. Regarding one of those, the direct comparison sales we used, one of the assessments for the 99 Murray Park Road that you're using as comparison roughly. That land area, I understand it's very similar impacted landfill site, but
Right.
you do realize that site's like 2 million
It-
square feet, so would you think that would have any bearing on the?
It is considerably larger, yes.
So-
That would have somewhat of an impact, so we are higher than the valuation there.
Okay, and I guess, is there any comparables here for this one you would think, or same thing, you're like, we pick?
They're the same comparables, so.
Okay, same thing.
Again, there are no sales of former landfill sites out there to provide any direct comparison.
Okay, that's actually all my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre.
I have no questions.
Ms. Rumpel?
Yes, I'm just wondering if the appellant is unable to sell this property because it is a lease from the city of Winnipeg. I'm assuming that your comparables are really not comparables unless some of these other comps are in the same situation.
Well, yes, in that our comps will not be encumbered by leases. They would be just direct sales of the land from, at arm's length. Now, and that is the basis on which we're valuing it. We're simply pointing out that in this particular situation, it is a leasehold where the tenant is responsible for paying the taxes, but they cannot benefit from any sales. So there is that wrinkle of this.
Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting back to order. Following along on our docket, we are on Burroughs Avenue.
That is correct, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Actually,
That
that's
one's withdrawn.
Oh, that one's withdrawn. Okay, sorry. Didn't know that. Okay, what about the next one that doesn't have an address?
Yeah, the 0.
19,
That's the last
15,
one, yes.
22?
That's the
Okay.
last one, yeah.
Okay, 19, 15, 22, when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The file number is 19-1522. The roll number is 0605062000. The address is Provencher Boulevard, and the owner is Sell Marion Holdings Limited. The 2020 assessed value based on Brooklyn State of April 1st, 2018 is $762,000. Before I continue with my brief, I actually do have a recommendation for this property. Worked up here earlier. I have
Oh, you have
a
a
workup
workup
part, I
sheet?
just wanted to see it, so.
Yep. Thank you.
So just, if you want to just look at maybe page 5, I agree for my land sale comparable, so you can just see the model rate we used originally on the property. It's 117,249 square feet. We were before using a model rate of $6.50 a square foot. After doing a little bit of reviewing this property and some of the issues with it, I'm recommending a rate of $5 a square foot, which would adjust the value from $762,000 to $586,000. So that's the recommendation I'm putting forward.
Okay, Mr. Smith? Are you
Um,
accepting that?
I appreciate the city having a second look at it, but I think that needs to
I
proceed.
understand, yes, no problem.
Okay,
Okay, I'll-
proceed then.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the property type is a Bindu or vacant industrial. It is zone M3 manufacturing heavy. The land area is 117,249 square feet. If you look at page 2 of my brief, you'll see the subject property in red where it's located. Along a long strip of land here. It's located on McTavish Street and Pervache Boulevard. I apologize, I should have zoomed up more to kind of give you a better idea of where it's located. Very close to the railroad tracks, close to Archibald. So it's in that area. It's also just off of very close to Mission Street as well, actually. So, if you look at page 3 of my brief, you'll see zoning information. It is zone M3, manufacturing heavy, and below is just a brief description of the heavy manufacturing, what that entails. On page 4 of my brief is just the valuation summary. Again, I'm going forward relying on my recommendation, $586,000. So 70-62, I'm not considering at this point. And there are no recent sales on this property that were found. Page 5 of my brief. Just need some information about my land sale comparables. Just briefly the subject. Again, the subject is 117,249 square feet. This is roughly 2.69 acres. It is zone M3 manufacturing heavy. You'll see the land influence is just an external corner. We use a park nearby, if I can tell. And again, we're using the adjusted rate of $5 a square foot, which gives us $586,000. If you look at my land sale comparables, my first one is on 25 Foster Street. It's similarly close into the relation to the subject property. It's 119,000 square feet, so very close to the subject size. It's in zone M2 manufacturing, and it sold in October of 2017 for $720,000 or $6 square foot. Comparable 2 is on 405 Hamel Avenue. This is 89,094 square feet, so slightly smaller than the subject property. It's owned M1. This particular property has no sewer, no water. It sold for $625,000 in 2014, so slightly older sale at $7.02 a square foot. Comparable 3 is on Mission Street, 975. It's roughly 60,000 square feet. It's owned M3, very close to the subject property. It has a rail line influence. It sold in 2015 for $387,500 at $6.47 a square foot. And my last comparable is on Mission Street, which I believe we actually had spoken with this one previously in my the other brief hearings. It's 50,000 square feet roughly, M3. It does have issues with contamination. It's a rail line influence. Sold in 2014 for $251,800 at a sale price per square foot of $5.05. So I believe my comparables I've shown here support the recommendation of $5 I have stated. If you look at page 6 of my brief, you'll just see some photos of the subject property. Page 6 at the top is the one on Foster Street. It's slightly not the same shape as the subject property, similar in size, but it is a bit different shape of the property. Comparable 2 is on Hamel Street. This is in St. Boniface. Slightly different shape of the subject property. I believe slightly smaller than the subject property. And page 7 is a property on Mission Street, 975 Mission. And page 8 is my comparable number 4. One is also Mission Street. That's one contaminated land which is spoken to previously. Page 9 of my brief, there's some information about the classification liability allocation. Again, I'm using my recommendation at $586,000. There are no other buildings or detached structures in any of these this parcel. And page 10 and 11 of my brief are just some information about the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. So that is my presentation, and I ask the board to confirm the recommendation I have put forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just a couple, and if I could pass this out as well, just with regard to the comparables there. Oops. So, let's jump ahead to number 2, I guess, as that's what the handout is dealing with here. So this is comparable number 2, 405 Hamel. The city is aware that this was sold as a multifamily site, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, and the information I've included there shows you the background of the property going through the rezoning process for RMFS. Indeed, the property is now zoned RMFS, so it was bought to be developed for a multifamily site right on the St. River. Happy to answer any questions if there's any on that. If you want to call that rebuttal, I don't know. I'm losing track.
Do you have any questions?
No, I'll be okay, that's okay.
Does the panel have any questions?
Okay.
Okay. Can you carry on with your question?
So just with regard to multifamily land site, obviously that was the intent when it was purchased, and multifamily goes for generally significantly higher value per square foot or acre than does industrial land. Just looking at page 5, so the subject property is on M3. The first two properties are higher level zoning, M2 and M1. Would they generally drive a higher sale price indicator?
Yes, they would be more ideal than M3, yes.
Okay. And comparable one, the 25 Foster Street, that's just south of Nairn Avenue, correct?
That is correct.
And the Hamel we dealt with, the last 2 properties there on Mission Street, they would be located on Mission on the north side, close to Panet, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Number 3, I think, was developed with an office building subsequent to sale for Garage Masters, is that?
I believe that is correct, actually, yes.
Mission Street there is a through street from Archibald. Sorry, let me get my facts straight here. Archibald,
Yeah,
correct. So
that is the-
visibility and access, etc., would be considerably better there, would it not?
Yes, it would be.
Okay.
Excuse that, yeah.
Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre?
I have no questions.
Ms. Rempel?
Yes, I'm wondering, under the land influences for the subject property, it indicates there's a park.
Yes, I noticed that initially when I put it in, but I don't know where the park is, to be honest with you, so I don't know why that should be there. That may have been a typo caused, because I don't believe there is a park there that I'm aware of.
Pardon me. Those are all my questions.
I'm just looking in your brief for the map as well.
Apologize, I didn't, some of my forwards I should have zoomed out more, I just kind of wanted to zoom in on the subject, so.
I can explain the park when we get there.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I have no questions. Mr. Smith?
So just for interest's sake, if you look at my page 6, there is a park. If you're familiar with where the mushroom plant is.
Yeah.
So the mushroom plant
Oh,
is
yes,
Maverick,
now it
Tavish,
makes sense.
Mission.
Yes.
And if you go just east of there, there's a little triangular parcel. And it's
Yeah.
the most bizarre sport I've heard of, where it's archery, but it's not shooting at targets. It's shooting at targets in the air, up a pole, or something like that. Belgian art, I don't remember exactly what it is, but that's what the park is.
Oh.
Okay.
So that's just background.
Thank you.
That's interesting.
So if you want to
Influence.
take your kids to the swings where the arrows are shooting around.
Not this spot, right? Okay.
So there is actually a park there. Anyway, Subject property, so we're looking at 2.7 acres of M3 zone land in the old St. Boniface heavy industrial area. We've got photos on page number 4 and 5. The property owner simply uses it for storage. They are a truck, two things, truck repair and some construction as well as part of their business. So they simply use that site for storage of their trucks. As you can see on my pages number 4 and 5 there, you've got the aerial on 5. So the frontage is on Provencher. However, if you flip over, it's not the Provencher we all think of. It's across Archibald, across the train tracks, and you can see from the aerial where it's specifically located. So immediately north of the subject property is the Loveday mushroom plant, and the area obviously is that heavy industrial M3 zone section of Old St. Boniface. Let's move on to the valuation itself. So we are looking at a 2.7 acre site, rectangular. It has the frontage on the Provencher at the front there. Provencher, and I think, again, if we look at page 6, this will be helpful. So Provencher is that street just north of the red dot, running between McTavish and Mission for that short stretch. It's low to no exposure, essentially. You're hidden from anything back there. So in terms of any visibility, it does not have that feature for any potential purchaser. M3 obviously limits your development on site somewhat, and does provide for the ability to have heavier industrial uses on site of a noxious nature. That's what the entire area is like. So let's move on to the sales comparisons themselves on page number 9. I think in this case, I certainly respect the city making the offer that they did. I think our information that we had for this is very strong, which is the reason that I wanted to proceed, because I think the value is pretty clearly shown to fall roughly where we have placed it. So subject is M3 zone, 2.7 acres. Our first sale is that original one that we discussed on Hutchings. It's not in the same area. It is larger at over 7 acres, and it traded at $6.89 a square foot, not contaminated. Peak of the market in Inkster Industrial is one of, if not the only, remaining development site in Inkster Industrial. So not specifically comparable. I'm more showing that to indicate what the upper end of the market would be. So let's move on to things that are more comparable. We have 615 Mission Street. This is 2.9 acre site sold in February 2016. M3 zoned, sold at $4.03 a square foot. This is located on the north side of Mission, roughly just across from the Loveday mushroom plant, so in much closer proximity to the subject. You then have 663 Marion Street. 663 Marion is located just, let me get my map here. It was located on the north side of Marion, just east of Archibald, on the east side of the tracks as well. It has frontage right on Marion. Excellent exposure. That traded at $5.14 a square foot. That property would be certainly superior to the subject property. Arguably, I would certainly say that the 615 Mission is also superior to the subject property at $4.03 a square foot. The Marion property traded in 2014, so it's a little bit older, but also M3 zoned. Number 4, 685 Camille Sis. This is 2017 sale, M2 zone, 4.6 acres, $4.02 a square foot. Again, that's in that St. Boniface Industrial Park. They go for slightly less an acre or per square foot in that development. 975 Mission, again, in the immediate area, closer to the Panet Road frontage. 2015 sale, 1.4 acres, $6.47 a square foot. Now, as you go down Mission there, certainly there were a number of smaller parcels that have a greater visibility, closer access to Highway 59, etc. There's a lot of factors that make those more valuable than the subject. They're also typically somewhat smaller. This one being 1.4 acres, they're going to drive a higher sale price. And we have the 2 in St. Boniface Industrial Park, again, greater, higher zoning level of M2, sold in 2017, 2.7 and 5.7 acres in that $4 to $5 a square foot range. Now, the subject property is M3 zoned, inferior location significantly, no exposure, M3, less purchasers out there for a property of this zoning in this location of this size. There's a lot of factors here that will drive a lower value than what those are. So the ones that are located in the St. Boniface Industrial Park, so the Camille Sisses and debates, generally would go for more than the subject would, given its parameters. The one that I feel closest, matches the subject property closest, would be the 615 Mission, number 2, at $4.03 a square foot. It is superior to the subject. It's very similar in size, however, it is fronting right on Mission Street, so you do have a level of exposure there, and I believe that they are developing that site with small bay industrial warehouse, so they are leasing it out on that site. So the subject, while I feel it is inferior to that, that is our closest comp, so I have used $4 per square foot for the subject property. Would it go for less than that? Quite possibly, but I don't have a lot of material to support a lower value necessarily, so I feel that $4 is probably a reasonable reflection of market value for the subject. That sale also occurred in February 2016, so. That gives us our final market value of $470,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Hurling, any questions?
No, I don't.
Mr. McIntyre?
I have no questions.
Ms. Rem?
I have no questions.
I don't have any questions. So thank you very much for your presentations today.
Thank you.
That one was-
Yep.
We got one more.
We do. And enjoy.
Yes.
I don't know if you get the break, but
A little bit.
a little bit.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time. Thanks, Michelle.
Bye. Take care. Bye now. Okay, so we are going to go back to item number 3 on our agenda. When you're ready, Mr. Harley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The file number is 19-957. The roll number is 1309-607-2200, and the owner is 5360847 Manitoba Limited. 2020 assessed value based on the reference date of April 1st, 2018 is $190,000. As I stated previously, I actually do have a recommendation for this property. I know they've not up here, but I do have a recommendation I'd like to present.
I'll do that.
Well, 5 is too many. Or maybe it's too many, I can't remember, sorry. I think that might be too many.
One last thing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So just a little you want to go to page 4, I'll just see the subject property, the initial model rate we used. We're initially, this property is assessed at 71,787 square feet, and we're using a model rate of $2.65 a square foot. I'm proposing a reduction in the rate used at $1.85 a square foot, which would give us a new adjusted value from $190,000 to $133,000. Now the reason this being is if you look at actually just page 2 of my brief, very interesting property. It's as you can see how everywhere where it's highlighted purple. This is the parcel outlines of these properties. Now we've combined all the properties into one parcel essentially. We're not valuing them as individual parcels, but it's zoned rural residential, but it's in an industrial area, so it's zoned rural residential. It is considered Vindu, and the problem with this site is I tried to get some background information on this. I couldn't find a lot, unfortunately, but I believe it was supposed to be some kind of development for some kind of residential, maybe condos or something. But I don't know if I believe it's. As far as I can tell, there's no permits or anything to indicate that there's anything going forward with it. There are no. It has no access to water. There's no sewer access or water at this time that I'm aware of, and it does have issues with access, as you can see from the photos. So. So that's why I'm proposing the 185. If you look at my comparables, there are not very many comparables. They're similar to this type of property, so but I found one that I closest could. For example, a comparable one, it is also zoned R5 rural residential. It has no sewer, no water. However, though, as you can see, this is kind of in a residential area, so it would be, it would have a higher, it would generate higher value than the subject. So, and if you look at comparable 2, this is an industrial one, 17. It's a lot higher than the subject property. It's also a smaller area. I'm just showing this one because it's close into relation to the subject property, and it's as close as I could find similar in terms of something. And then if you look at page 3 and 4, 3 is in Waverly West. It's also an agricultural land. It's similar in size to the subject property, sold in 2016. But again, it has no access in terms of water, sewer, and it has outlet access. But as you can see, it's a better area, so it does, and it's sold for $2.31 square foot. So, and my final one is on comparable 4 is on Brickington Street, which is in St. Boniface Industrial. Or sorry, I apologize. In the around Mission, and it's an older cell, 2012. It is smaller. It's manufacturing heavy, but similar in terms of like the shape, sort of, and it's, as you can see, we're using $5.63 a square foot. This one sold in 2012. Again, this was, like I said, this is a very unique property. We find very reasonably comparable, so that's why I presented this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. McIntyre, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Ms. Runkle?
No, thank you.
And I have no questions. So thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
I think that concludes our hearing today.
Thank you.